put a smile on your face when you're moving from place to place. Good morning, good morning, morning, good morning, morning.
Good morning, viewers, and welcome back to the Tobago Updates morning show, coming to you here live from the Port Mall in Scarborough, Tobago. I'm Julien Skeete, and in this segment, we are going to be chatting with Max James, a former assemblyman of the Tobago House of Assembly. And yes, we're speaking budget 2020, fiscal 2024, presented yesterday by the Minister of Finance, the Honorable Colum Imbud, just at around over $59 billion package that would have been presented there. Good morning to you and welcome.
Good morning, Julian, and thank you for having me once more.
All right. So as we start off, I want to start with the opener. We have seen the budget presentation. I know based on your background in terms of labor and so on, we have seen increases in minimum wage. We have seen some offerings specific to wanting to assist parents who may have challenges in terms of through students, $1,000 grant being conceptualized, and the list goes on. Your thoughts?
Well,
let's get your overall perspective first.
The budget frightens me as a Tobagonian who has been in the struggle for so many years, and it seems like the hole that we are in is getting deeper. I see the budget as a recipe for Tobagonians migrating to Trinidad and elsewhere. Clearly, there are no opportunities in it for Tobagonians. And clearly, we can't continue to survive and to accommodate this relationship that we call Trinidad and Tobago. In my own mind and my own opinion, I believe we are standing on the threshold of separation. And this has been going on for too long. It has been going, we can stay at this stage now, Julian, and predict what next year's budget for Tobago is likely to be. The overall figure will increase, but what we got, $2.6 billion on this occasion?
Yes, just about 2.585, right. Yes.
And we're likely to get maybe a $60 billion next year and get a little percentage of that. It's a budget in which you see a plethora of goodies for Trinidadians, people who live in Trinidad. All the things that you said there, the roads, healthcare, incentives across all the sectors. And so sector-wide, you have so many opportunities and incentives for Trinidadians. Our government here in Tobago submitted a budget hoping to receive the funds that we asked for so that we could have a better way of life in Tobago. That's what our assembly did, our government here did. And the Minister of Finance could laugh and say, he wishes us well. For me, that was a pivotal statement. For me, it epitomizes how Trinidadians look at us, or the government look at us. And it's another installment where our efforts to develop Tobago has been stultified. It doesn't offer us any hope because we cannot live on a measly budget. We can't develop on a measly budget of $2.6 billion, I think it is. So he says, okay, you did the right things in the budget. However, I wish you well. How does the Chief Secretary and his cabinet here, how they reprioritize? There are insufficient funds for infrastructural development. There are insufficient funds out of $220 million thereabout for roads development, agricultural development, agricultural equipment, to develop a tourism plant. The things that will begin to generate funds for us to, and then you have on the other side where we have aging equipment at Spell, where we can't begin to purchase the kinds of equipment that Spell can perhaps, that's a study park quarry, where Spell can perhaps bring in the kinds of revenue generation, so that I do not see it auguring well for Tobago and for Tobagonians, and it will be a continuing exodus of our people. So that I think, and this is my profound view, that we in Tobago have to prepare ourselves for secession. It's not going to happen next year. A better budget for us is not going to happen next year, especially when it comes to an election year within the next year. So that, because you know the budget for next year when it comes will be just before the elections are due to be called. So they're not going to give you any more money to make you look good. So I don't see any silver lining in respect of the autonomy bill that they're talking about.
So what I want to get, how do we then respond to the fact this year we've seen the budgetary allocation for Tobago is 2.585 billion. We have a scenario where 2.298 billion out of that, and it's very important to note, is for recurrent expenditure. So that goes towards covering salaries and in terms of sustaining the jobs that exist by and large within the Tobago space, and 260 million for the development program. However, this has been touted as an overall total increase of 64.2 million over the 2023 allocation, and then the minister went on further to talk about over about 600, I think it's another 600 million or so that will be coming to Tobago through ministries. How do you then respond to say, in the circumstances, it would appear that Tobago is getting more?
The man is crazy. $64 million is like building $64 million houses, or building 120 houses at $500,000. You see how incredible it is. So that is nothing to shout about or boast about or applaud or to be happy about. This is not significant and a significant installment or increase in terms of what we are asking for. We are talking about, did you listen to the Secretary of Infrastructure and the Secretary for Agriculture, the Secretary for Tourism, in terms of the development plans for those sectors and areas? So we don't have any money to do anything. Whither goes Tobago? It's a perennial charade, it's a perennial whipping that we get by the government. There's no sincerity, there's no significant initiative to assist the Assembly to develop Tobago. Look at what happened to the Cabo Star. We were on the verge of beginning to starve in Tobago. Supermarket shelves were beginning to diminish. Food prices went up. The cost of lumber and hardwares went up. And hadn't the Cabo Star been repaired very quickly, we have had a calamity here in Tobago. So we need to, the Assembly, our government here in Tobago, and the Assembly as a whole, we need to speak with one voice. We're asking the PNM to get on board with the rest of Tobago, and we begin to plan for our autonomy, plan for Tobago's development in a serious way. But under the present environment, that seems impossible. And I want to urge this Assembly, this Executive Council, to begin to plan in significant and serious ways where Tobago can sustain itself as if Trinidad did not exist. Unfortunately, the holders, the power brokers in Trinidad would not allow that, because they see themselves as wanting to hold on to Tobago seats, although their efforts so far doesn't seem to bear that kind of fruit. And apparently, if it is that this Assembly keeps along the trajectory it's going, they're likely to lose the 2 seats. However, I don't see anything worthwhile in this budget for Tobago. It's a budget that, in fact, diminishes our efforts to develop Tobago as is envisioned by the Executive Council.
So would you say, when we look at what has been allocated, if one is to seriously consider over the years, no matter the political administration, whether it was the People's Partnership, whether it was the current PNM administration, the development budget ultimately has been in and around the same, falling as part of that whole 4.3, just over, in terms of the percentage, closer to the minimum line and not the upper line of 6.9. would we then see that it is probably unrealistic that the THA would have expected to receive more in these circumstances? And just as you are rightfully saying, in a time where the people of Tobago responded by saying, no, we have rejected the People's National Movement in Tobago. We want a new administration to manage our affairs. Did we expect things to get better, or much better rather, financially in those circumstances beyond the 4.3? Was that a practical expectation?
Well, you have to have hope, because the PNM has business persons here. People voted for them to go East and West. So you have to have hope. That's the best we can do. The alternative to that is to break away. If you give me one reason, I only want one reason, Julian. Maybe we could talk about it here. Give me one reason for Tobago to stay with Trinidad in the circumstances that we found ourselves in the last 22 years.
Well, some may say, some who have listened to the budget may speak about the fact that they're seeing an increase in the minimum wage.
Those are not fundamental things.
To 20, they're seeing the grants that we
At
spoke
$3,
about.
that's still the relationship for?
Well, it may not be fundamental depending on where you sit. If you are a minimum wage worker and you have been receiving closer to the 1750, in fact, the 1750 couldn't even cover your living expenses in the first instance. You're very grateful to possibly be receiving more. Would you not say some of those factors will reach in terms of the average citizen who probably sees
that
themselves as being in need?
That $3 increase in the minimum wage has already been wiped out by inflation. That $3 increase is not fundamental when you look at the other areas of living and livelihood requirements in Trinidad and Tobago.
So what would
so I wouldn't stay in a relationship for $3. So I'm still asking the question to any fair-minded Tobagonian, any right-thinking Tobagonian. Give me one reason. So let's escalate. Give me two reasons why we really want to stay in this relationship where we have seen a downward spiral of conditions, living conditions in Tobago. What is the aspiration for young professionals who want to stay here? What the private sector has not developed in any significant way, so that people who come back home with their degrees, their master's degrees, their doctorate, they can't stay here. What this executive council has done through their planning, whether you agree with them or not, they want to have the port built, they want to have Scarborough improved, or tourism plant improved, or agricultural facilities and incentives that we could introduce to have farmers who can produce products and byproducts from the agricultural activities and so on. It's to open up the country, Tobago as a country, to an improved standard of living where people can say, we want to stay at home. Because we're having opportunities to stay up, we're having reasons to stay at home because we're having these incentives, business will thrive, and so forth. In so far as that is concerned, we have seen no real effort by this government to, as my friend Lloyd Best used to say, to ensure that the other half of the nation is in a position to even help out the other half of the nation. And what is worrying is that we have all this gas and oil that they've been stealing for ever since we have known Tobago. And then you give me a little 4 cents. So this notion about the $1,000 book grant, that is good. It's a good measure, I'll admit that. The $3 increase, it's a welcome increase because people are likely to carry between an extra $300 or $400, and therefore the disposable income hopefully will improve and might assist perhaps in a better way of life for them. I mean, $500 increase, $400 increase on the pay is something worthy to talk about. But other than that, this budget sets Tobago to be disseminated by the economic circumstances in which we find ourselves. We cannot build roads and bridges or general infrastructure. It calls for a lot of maintenance in rainy season. You see what happened in the Pitikarim, the little dry season there a while ago, and as soon as the rains began to fall, we had a lot of landslides. So we have an aging infrastructure that was abandoned by the PNM over the last 20 years, or as the case may be. But we need money to significantly improve our plant and equipment, provide for development of agriculture, for infrastructure in agriculture and tourism and all the other areas.
So
So
how?
it doesn't give us hope here in Tobago.
So this now means that the THA has, and even continues to have the challenge, and has to seek to overcome that challenge. How am I now going to use the very limited sum of 260 million in addition to other areas
But
to seek to advance Tobago? Is that now one of the very real challenges that is put before the Tobago House of Assembly?
of course, and I want to broaden the answer by saying Tobagonians generally, because they rely on the public policy, they rely on the assembly, which is the largest employer in Tobago. It must be in a position to offer better jobs, better infrastructure, better opportunities, better incentives to develop a professional class. If I weren't entrenched in Tobago, I would have been long gone, because there's nothing here to keep the young and upcoming professional. If teachers and police officers weren't embedded here in Tobago, they would have long gone, many of whom have gone away. Because you can't, the arrangement between Tobago and Trinidad does not put us here in Tobago in a situation where we can be working for the kinds of salaries that give us a better standard and quality of life. And I think if we in Tobago begin to understand that under this arrangement, we will not have a better standard of life unless we see that and understand that, then we're in a very sorry situation, Julian.
So some people have the fear, and I'd like you to respond to that. You speak to moving to that better way of life and a greater level of autonomy. How do you see Tobago being able to sustain itself if that drastic move is made in terms of secession?
Well, the first thing, we'll go with all our gas and oil, which will bring us significant revenues to do anything we want.
But when we have to have a greater level of output, per se, in terms of being able to develop industry here in Tobago, to be able to really maximize even access to the gas and oil that we see falls within our boundaries?
Well, the companies are here. We pay them for mining the oil and getting it in the way that is getting it to market. So we have that. The question is, where do we stay and die, or we leave and live? That's the issue. You see, when Eric Williams went to England, Trinidadians didn't say, how are we going to live? He knew he had Shell and Tesoro and all the oil companies right up to the 1980s. And Trinidad enjoyed the oil boom. What did we get? Even when Robinson built the runway and the seaport, which Rowley called a duck pond. You remember those two? They said Robinson was spending wee money in Tobago. The idea is, I'm not seeing any incentive for the young professional to live and to stay here. You as I'm asking Tobagonians, tell me when you see me on the streets, give me two reasons for sustain this relationship. I'm not talking about a $3 minimum wage increase, because I've been paying my workers more than the $17.50 already. So it doesn't help. Most people, you see, the Minister of Finance uses that chickenery, that trick, to say, I have increased the minimum wage. Do you think employers are going to pay workers more than they're already paying them in this hard and harsh go over season time? They're already receiving more than the minimum wage. So it's a political ploy to say, well, we are doing this for you. So there is no benefit to the measure as announced increasing the minimum wage. This is why the unions have been saying $125 and $30. Because they know, we know as a trade unionist or a former trade unionist, we know that workers generally across the nation have already been paid more than the minimum wage.
I want you to tell us a little
So
bit.
there's no benefit to the measure. It's just nice talk.
Your thoughts in relation to the announcement of the introduction of the reintroduction rather of the property tax, and where we will see those revenues being able to benefit in local government bodies in Trinidad. What are your thoughts in relation to that?
Well, Um, in the Tobago case, our source of funds, meaning when the property tax is collected here, we will know the true value of the Tobago economy. So, and it might perhaps likely show us what Tobago is really worth in respect of its contribution to the nation. So we can say, well, we are collecting this, and therefore you can't give us less than we are collecting. So the insurance companies, the chief secretary and his team need to enforce that provision in the act and force them to pay. And then we begin to collect the increases from the various landowners and property owners and so forth. We will know, we'll be in a better position to calculate and understand Tobago's contribution. And so it gives us a bargaining chip to say, we want more because we are already contributing more than even what you're giving us. So it has that benefit. But some people would like me to say that the property tax is a good thing. Now, I think it's a good thing in respect of the value of my property. I think it's a good thing, as I said before, in terms of calculating what Tobago contributes. All right? And I don't think it's very onerous because it works out to be like about $83 a month. We spend that on boyfriends and girlfriends and on liquor and having a good party time. So I think if we are serious as a nation, as a people, I wouldn't knock it too much. I don't welcome it because more money.
But you just said it's a good thing.
But it's a good thing. I mean, it's a good thing. There are some good things you don't welcome, but they're necessary. but they're necessary. You know, I don't have much fault with it.
Would we therefore say, in terms of even looking at that kind of situation and the broader perspective, that the THA now needs to get down to the wheels, look at what has been allocated, and now we look forward to what would be the revised allocations and how it is going to approach development in the island? Because whether we believe it or not, the reality is this is what some may describe as the second to last budget before the last one is presented next year. And by last, I simply mean in relation to what is the constitutionally due date for elections come 2025 in terms of the general elections.
Those special events.
Correct, followed by the THA elections. And you know, sometimes when we look at the picture, you say what you want about developing and advancing a country. Any administration seeks to ensure that you're responding to the needs of the people in order to try to get back in office. Would we now say that the THA has to get down to the grind in terms of looking at its revised allocations and, more importantly, figuring out how you're going to ensure that you seek to derive even more benefit, notwithstanding the limited amount of funds being given for development in Tobago?
Well, it's
as the harsh reality.
Yes, I think it's not only just reprioritizing, but the behavior of our cabinet here. Everything that they do will be under the spotlight, so they will have to be very careful in terms of all their collective actions, how they meet and treat with the people. All of their decision making will be under scrutiny. And how wisely have they prioritized or reprioritized what has been given to them? So it will be a collective effort in terms of not just the budget, in terms of the entire decision making. Of course, key, we want to look at what has been prioritized. And that will be a task. I don't envy them. It's an unfortunate position that this present assembly has found itself. And let me use the words of the finance minister. I wish them well, but I think they will surmount the challenges. I think they have fine professionals within the executive council. I think that Tobago would need to rally around them. So we will see exactly how they prosecute this particular neck of the woods that they have found us, and we in Tobago have found us. So I think they will need every bit of support. Every positive bit of support that we can. But they also have an enjoining responsibility, or let me say, So that will be our enjoying response. But they have a responsibility, first up, to make sure that all that they do and say can continue to ingratiate or to support and the people in terms of their needs. So it's going to be a very difficult task. But I think that if they can move around Tobago and show them the kind of autonomy that we want, that we would have voted for, that we would have sent down to Parliament, I think they will have to sell that. But in order to sell that, we expect them, we are hoping that they will do positive things so that they'll have the people on their side. So when the bell rings later in the next 2 years or so, people will continue to vote for the party that is currently in power in the assembly. I don't think it should present much of a challenge. They will have to find innovative means of financing the projects that will be beneficial to Tobago.
Yes.
And I think that they will need to pursue that with expedition and with alacrity to ensure that they succeed in terms of those projects that we have been waiting on. The development of Scarborough, our port, certainly our tourism plant and that we have here, and our agricultural activities. I think those 4 areas are what they should need to focus on, so we can bring home the things that Tobagonians have been expecting or urging for over the last 20 odd years.
All right. Well, we got to leave it there this morning. I mean, so much more things that Max James has just touched on there in his closing remarks. But we don't have enough time this morning. But the conversation will certainly continue in relation to the budget for fiscal 2024. And we want to say thank you, Max James, former assemblyman here in the Tobago House of Assembly, for joining us on set as we continue to discuss the budget here at the national level, Trinidad and Tobago, and more specifically, the allocation coming to Tobago. Viewers, we want to thank you for the continued love and support and for choosing the Tobago Updates morning show, and to remind you that this is your opportunity to share the live, share the live, share the live.